Today on episode number 88 of the podcast, we're discussing some common struggles that you might face after going through sight loss. What's up, VIPs? Welcome to Life After Sight Loss Radio, the podcast helping you discover life after sight loss. My name is Derek Daniel. I am your host and resident VIP, aka visually impaired person, and joining me across the table is my co-host and resident sighted supporter, my lovely wife, April.
Hello there.
All right, guys, so we talk about on the podcast the good, the bad, the in-between, the ups, the downs. We talk about it all, and today we're going to focus on some of the struggles, the common struggles that you might experience after going through sight loss. Now, this list today is really focused on the visually impaired person. Sometimes we talk about sighted supporter stuff, sometimes VIP, so today it's all VIP related.
Yes.
However, we're going to try to give both sides and talk about why it's important that everybody knows this when you go through sight loss. Of course, we can't talk about every single thing here in the podcast, so I've got some resources and links for you over in the show notes.
You can find those show notes at lifeaftersightloss.com/088. Show notes include links, resources, ways to subscribe, and more. So head on over to lifeaftersightloss.com/088.
All right, guys, so check out those show notes and get some more info. So we've got a list here of, 6 things? Is that right?
Yep.
6 things that you might experience. These are very common struggles. I think I've experienced all of these at one point or another, and some of them very recently. So they might hit you 2 months in, they might hit you 10 years in. And so don't be afraid, don't be scared, don't be nervous. Like these are all very common.
They might hit you over and over throughout your entire sight loss journey.
Totally, absolutely. So they're not just one-time events. They can really hit you, all the time. So let's just run through them, these common struggles you face when going through sight loss. Number 1, lack of confidence. And I've talked to numerous people who've experienced this. You lose your sight and all of a sudden that confident person that you were just goes out the window.
Yeah.
You lose confidence because you're scared to get out and about. You have fear of something happening to you. You're not sure what's going to happen. You're not sure what to do or how to do it. And you just really lose that confidence. And that can affect you in so many areas because let's say you lose your confidence to get out and just walk. Well, that can affect you at your job. That can affect you in your parenting. That can affect you in your relationship. Even just the simple act of making a peanut butter sandwich. I don't have the confidence to get this out and do it. And that can be very, very scary. Lack of confidence, such a true statement. And I think all of us experience that.
Yes. And that's really hard to watch a VIP go through because, they, especially Derek has always been a confident person. I think you all can probably tell that. Anyway, so, to watch him go through sight loss and, at the time he lost his sight, he was doing entertainment in a, theme park. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And so he did great on stage. He was always confident and he became afraid of falling off the stage, which who wouldn't be? I mean, you lose your sight and you don't want to fall off the stage. Nobody wants to do that. But that was such a big part of who you were. And so having to relearn how to do that. Now, I will tell you what, he got out there and he mastered it. He practiced and rehearsed and people worked with him and he got back out there and he went right back to it, 3 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks after he lost his sight. So, I mean, he is amazing when he does stuff like that. But seeing him go through that was really disheartening because it was like it had stripped away part of who you were. Mm-hmm. And that was so hard to watch. But then seeing him work through it and power through it, having that perseverance that we talked about last week, just to power through that challenge and get back to where he was in that one, aspect of his life was so encouraging for the rest of our journey.
Yeah, and as you mentioned last week, we talked about the things we've learned, and that was part of learning perseverance. I wanted to do this, and this is part of who I was, so I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any other option, so I had to do it. So yeah, definitely a lack of confidence can really affect your life, and it can come into play really early on, and then maybe you build some confidence, and maybe something else happens, and you get scared of that. I know sometimes taking an Uber can be kind of freaky, but you build up that confidence, and you go out and you try it, and I think some of it too can affect the sighted supporter, especially a spouse, because it's I'm nervous for you to go out on your own, and it's if I, the VIP, build up confidence to do that, you kind of have to trust and build up your confidence in the VIP.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it does actually make me nervous for you to take Ubers because you don't know the person, and that is just scary to me. It's like, please come home. No offense to any Uber drivers out there watching, or
maybe you're the good Uber driver,
an Uber driver or anything like that, but you just never know who you're going to meet. And I mean, and that can be in the grocery store, or a school event or anything like that. Having that confidence to get out there and actually go to those things and do those things is difficult, and you have to build it up and just learn how to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you start assuming things that aren't necessarily true. Like, I'm going to be taken advantage of because I'm blind, or
right.
people are going to treat me weird, or you start thinking those things because of that lack of confidence. And it's just, most of it's not true.
Right.
I've had good experiences in Ubers and Lyfts, and going out by myself. People are kind, and 98% of the time, it's been good.
And a lot of times in our situation, people don't necessarily know that you're blind. Well, before we got Koa,
we have a big dog
before Koa came to live with us, people didn't really know that you were blind. So luckily for you, they didn't have that indication to be able to take advantage of you so well.
That preconceived notion.
So easily. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And honestly, even with the dog, people are still like, are you training the dog?
That's true.
And I'm like, no, he's mine. They're like, you don't look blind. So, they still don't know. They just assume I'm bringing my dog in. But anyway, it's not. It's not. So yeah, number one, lack of confidence. Number two, diminished mobility. This is one of those things that it gets better as you go along because you work at it, but especially at first, and even, when you're in a new area or you move or something like that, diminished mobility. This can be, maybe if you're an older person experiencing macular degeneration or diabetic retinopathy, something like that, you're already working through physical changes in your body, then you take the eyesight away and that really affects it. I mean, even if you're young, walking in a straight line for me is so difficult. I can't walk in a straight line to save my life. I'm always like bumping into her or 10 feet away. It's like I'm just swaying in the breeze. And walking a straight line, trying to keep my balance.
Yeah, a lot of times that's not necessarily just walking to keep your balance, but when you're bending over to pick something up, like your equilibrium is just thrown off because your eyes are not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so your mobility, we talk about O&M all the time, orientation and mobility, and they go hand in hand. Orientation is the idea of like knowing where you are in space, knowing left, right, knowing north, south, where you are, how many turns did you make, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But mobility is the act of actually going and getting out there and walking the route, or running around, or, like you said, bending over, the mobility. So all of those things can be affected, decreased mobility. Now, can you increase your mobility? Can you get better at it? Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Like that's why you have O&M training. Some people call it white cane training. I mean, it's just whatever. But you have that kind of training so you can get better at it. But it's important to remember that your mobility is always affected. Is it always decreased? Whatever word you want to use, but it's always affected. I mean, even today, 18 years later, I still walk into her, when we're walking beside each other, because I don't have that ability to keep on a straight path. And that's just part of my decreased mobility, if you will.
I can't tell you one person that I know that actually can walk in a perfectly straight line though either. So
they would fail the sobriety test?
Your sight loss. I don't walk in a straight line. I know I don't.
That we're just giving secrets away. No, like we would all fail a sobriety test. I don't know though, if I'm getting out of the car and failing the sobriety test and I tell the officer, it's okay, I'm blind, I can't walk a straight line. Do you think that would go over well?
I don't think so.
Probably not. All right, so number 3, increased loneliness. Now, not everybody is going to experience this the same way or to the same degree, or even maybe at all necessarily, depending on who you are. But if you're a person like me that is a people person, and you get stuck at home because you can't drive and your job goes away and you can't get out there and do a lot of things, you probably will experience this. As a matter of fact, I've experienced this just recently. And it's not like, at this point in my life, it's not like I'm lonely and I'm, just weeping and wailing all the time, but I do experience it, and it affects me, in a regular way. Like, oh, I'm sad, or, oh, I'm dealing with some emotional stuff going on. I have enough understanding of what's going on to know that what it is, and it's going to get better at some point. But I still experience that loneliness, and loneliness can affect you, in lots of different ways. And then when you're sad and you're dealing with relationships and it's like, oh, well, let's go out and do something. It's like, oh yeah, but you put so much pressure on that one,
Right. This is just going to make it all better.
Yeah, and it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's like, so yeah, I mean, you can experience loneliness for sure whenever you go through sight loss.
Yeah, and I think that is really hard on the sighted supporter to see them feeling lonely and not being able to help them feel better or to fix it, because I'm a fixer. I mean, that is my life. I fix things, not with my hands necessarily, just I solve problems. But there's not always a fix. There's not always something that I can say or something that I can do to encourage, or, a special meal to make, or a special, outing to go on, or anything that's going to fix it. It's kind of a time that comes and has to be dealt with, and really has to take its toll, and then things tend to get better. Mm-hmm. It comes in cycles.
Sure.
And a lot of times it does have to do with, if I'm busy, like I've got a lot of things going on, with work and with the kids, and maybe classes and things like that, then I'm not home as much. And then I feel like that tends to affect you more. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like this a couple weeks ago, you had classes you had to take and work you had to do, and so you weren't home as much. And it was just like, I'm here all by myself.
Right.
All by myself.
And so many times, I mean, you're a people person, you're a relational person, and it doesn't even matter if we just go to the mall and walk around the mall, or go to the grocery store, or just go to lunch. Like, getting out and just having interactions with other people kind of fuels you. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be that we have to go to a dinner party, or, have a bunch of people over or anything like that. Now that does help, but just getting out of the house helps you. And being that I was gone, I mean, I truly worked 6 out of 7 days that I was not home for, the regular times that I am. Then you were stuck in the house, and that just kind of compounds your loneliness.
Absolutely. I think we were talking the other day about going to Starbucks, and people will go and like work and be on their laptop. And I was like, oh, I'd love that. That'd be great. And you were like, what?
No,
that
thanks.
sounds awful. It's like, no, it's the life that's in there, the interaction, the people, the sounds, the, what's going on. That would help to fuel me. Whereas some people like you would just be like, nope, I need quiet. I just don't want people around me. And so if you are experiencing loneliness, don't be surprised, and
not at all.
and let it kind of just ride out. Because sometimes with loneliness, and I know we're getting really heavy on this, but with loneliness, you think, oh well, let's just invite you to do something, and it's like sometimes you get so lonely, you're just like, I don't even want to deal with people, like, which seems backwards, because you're like, you're lonely, you should do something. It's like, it's just very weird. So if you get to the point where it's really heavy and lasting for days upon end, then I would say, seek help and find somebody to connect with and that sort of thing, because then it spurs on to other things mentally that you don't want to deal with alone. I think is the key there.
And just for the sighted supporters, just know that being there and being supportive is usually enough. You don't have to find the, check the box of the thing that's going to make them happy or not feel lonely anymore. Just know that being present is what we need to do.
Absolutely. Being present. So crucial. All right. Number 4 is social exclusion. This can be one of the struggles you face almost all the time, because first of all, places going out and about, they're not always accessible. I mean, it could be it's not accessible getting into the place. It's not very accessible experiencing the thing. Things are getting better, which is great. Like going to the movies, I can get the audio description device if it works, which the last time I went, it did work. It worked right off the bat. It was great. I was like, oh, yay. So things are getting better. But going out and about can be hard, because if your friends want to go to, I don't know, they want to go bowling, let's say. Well, I like bowling. I'm still a pretty decent bowler, even though I can't see. But if bowling's one of those things that's difficult, and you're like, I don't want to do this. Well, then you might end up saying like, well, I'm not going to go, or they're not going to invite you to go, or blah, blah, whatever the case is. So you have some social exclusion that you face, and that can be really difficult. Well,
and your friends may also think, oh, this won't be enjoyable for them because they can't see the pins, talking about bowling. They, we'll have to put the bumpers out or whatever, which you don't need the bumpers. You can still bowl normally.
You can still do it. That's right. Throw them down there.
But they're trying to look out for the best for you and not discourage you in your sight loss. And so then they don't invite you. And it's like, well, why didn't you ask? Like,
yeah, at least ask.
Would I like to go bowling? I would think that you could answer for yourself. And, you could say, yes, I'd like to go, or no, I don't want to go. I don't think that would be very fun. And leave it up to the VIP and not as the friends make that decision for them.
Yeah, and I think, and people are not terrible. They're not like, we don't want to invite them. But it's like, oh, Derek probably wouldn't enjoy this. We're not. It's like, well, let me make that decision.
Right.
And then on the VIP side, you have to know that, look, sometimes you just have to go. You just have to do it, even if you think it's going to be difficult. Like, if you want to go out and be with people and they're going to something that's maybe not site-friendly, well, whoop-de-doo, get over it and go anyway. Like, if they're going laser tag, go to laser tag. Like, it's probably going to be difficult. You probably just need to find a spot and, just shoot the gun a bunch of times. Yeah. But you're going to be hanging out with people. And if that's important to you, then don't be like, look, I'm not going to enjoy laser tag, because it's real easy. Let me just tell you, it's real easy to be like, I can't believe they're going to that. I wouldn't enjoy that. Why wouldn't they do something that I would enjoy? And blah, blah. And then you get inside yourself and it's a whole and this, I don't say it all the time, but it's like, look, just suck it up, because it's not always about your sight loss. Like, it's just not. And
you don't necessarily have to participate in the event. Like, if you don't want to play laser tag, that's fine.
Sure.
But go along, have that socialization, be, interacting with your friends and your family. And there are times where we go do certain things and I'm racking my brain and can't think of anything off the top of my head. But swimming is one thing, which Derek just doesn't like to swim necessarily. So
who wants to get in cold water? That sounds terrible.
Anyways, something that maybe you don't enjoy doing, but your family is doing it, or you have a whole group of friends who's participating. That doesn't mean you can't go. You can still go and have those interactions with your friends.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like if you're at a Christmas party and they're passing around presents, you're not going to be like, well, I can't see the present, so I'm not going to even have this. I'm not going to. It's like you're going to get the present. Like, calm down.
Right.
So just go and do the things because look, social exclusion is going to happen from time to time, but just go enjoy yourself if that's something you enjoy. Now, if you're like, I'd rather stay home and read a good book, fine.
Absolutely.
Do that too. But if you're a social person, then you're probably going to face social exclusion in some way, shape, or form.
And it's just something that's, again, a challenge that you have to overcome, and you figure out how to make it work.
Absolutely. So. And you can do it. Perseverance. We talked about that last week. That's right. Perseverance. All right. Next up is, and actually this goes kind of along with them, feelings of being a burden. And all of us feel this from time to time. I don't even care if you're sighted or not. I think everybody experiences this for different reasons.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah. And so, but if you're visually impaired, you're like, oh, they're going to have to help me read the menu, or they're going to have to help me line up the bowling ball, mentioning that. Like, they're going to have to help, and it's going to be a whole thing, or they're going to have to come out of their way to pick me up. And, I don't even want to do it. So what happens is you just don't do it. You just don't deal with it. And, people are like, no, I'll swing by the house and pick it. It's like, no, don't even worry about it, because I don't, and you're not a burden. Or even if you are, you're not challenging these people at all, because look, sometimes people just have to go out of their way, and that's okay.
Yeah, they need to sacrifice themselves sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine. So, but everybody feels this. It's just such a common feeling. For whatever reason, in lots of different situations, you feel like a burden. Like you feel like that heavy thing that people are going to have to carry. Yeah. And that, I think, goes right along with lack of confidence, feeling like you're, not as good as you were.
I mean, you are going to have those people in your life who treat you like a burden as well, which is miserable. I mean, and shame on them for doing that, because it's not your fault that you've lost your sight. It's not your fault that you can't drive or can't do things that you used to do or that you've ever been able to do. But the fact of the matter is, if they're a friend and they're your good friend, then they should suck it up and sacrifice, because you want to be friends with this person. You want to have this relationship. You want to be out and do things with your friends and live as normal a life as you possibly can. And other people should help you do those things.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have friendship, you're just friends, and you have blindness or whatever, and that's just part of it. You're the token blind person in your friend group if you want. But that's just part of who you are. It's not like, well, you're blind now, so we can't be friends anymore. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? You probably don't want to be friends with that person anyway. Just as a side note. But when you go through this, you're going to have those feelings. It's, I had a friend once and we were joking around, and this was a joke, but he said, I don't really mind that you're blind until it starts affecting my life. Like, which is actually probably pretty true with people. It's like, oh, you can be whatever you want, but if it affects me, then I don't want to deal with it. And that's just a selfish thing. And look, I don't think because I think a lot of people say, well, that's why I don't like sighted people, because they're so selfish. And it's like, it's not sighted people. It's just people, like, and they're not jerks because they're sighted. They're just terrible people. And
no, they're not. They're not terrible people. They just don't know.
They just don't understand.
They need to be informed.
That's right. They need to be educated. We talked about that last week as well. But feelings of being a burden, very common for, I think, the VIP, the sighted supporter, everybody has those feelings from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. And finally, and this one's kind of an offshoot from the rest of them, but lack of knowledge of services. Now, this can affect you in so many different ways, because when you first lose your sight, you have no idea what's out there. When I first lost my sight, I didn't have a clue. Like, I was just like, what? I remember somebody showing me Zoom text on the computer, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could see this. I could do it, and that was so exciting. Now, with the plethora of things that are available to us, it's like, wow, there's so much out there.
Right.
But when you don't know that it's out there, it can be like, oh, how am I going to do this ever? There's nothing for me to do now. And it's like, no, there's so much for you to do, like accessible technology and sports and activities and books. And there's just so many things out there.
Yeah.
And when you don't know about it, it's almost like this wall has been built and now you're stuck and you can't do anything about it. And so that's why you're listening or watching this podcast right now, is to find out different things about technology and understanding and services and whatnot. That's why you go to your local Association of the Blind or NFB or ACB chapter. That's why you watch YouTube videos. That's why you do your research, so you can know those services. But it just seems like, man, when I lost my sight, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And there was less than there is now, but just getting connected with people who could show me different things, who could connect me with people who could teach me things and get me equipment and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
That was just such a huge, huge step, and helped me, I think, getting connected with the technology and the assistive technology and so forth. That helped build my confidence. That helped me to know, wow, I can do this. And, got me off of the couch and helped me know I can go to college and I can, have a job and raise a family and all that sort of thing. And I think just that knowledge of those things, even if you don't learn it overnight, can really help you emotionally, mentally, really keep persevering, as we talked about. All right. So those are some common struggles that we face whenever we lose our sight. I'm sure there are a lot more. I'm sure there are other things. I just wanted to give a few common struggles that we go through. And so my question for you today is this: what is one thing that you still struggle with even today after losing your sight, whether it's 2 months, 2 years, 10 years, whatever the case is? As we talked about, I mean, some of these things I still struggle with on, I don't want to say regular like every day, but, semi-regular basis. My mobility's always decreased because I can't see, and that's just how it goes. Experiencing loneliness and lack of confidence, all those sort of things. Even though I'm up on assistive technology, there are things that I don't know about and I have to learn about. And so I still struggle with some of these. So what is one thing that you still struggle with when it comes to losing your sight? All right, guys, so a few housekeeping items for you. As always, we want to make sure that you subscribe to the podcast.
Yes. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss another single episode.
And if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast catcher like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, you can check out the links in the show notes to all of those places and make sure you don't miss another single episode. We love to hear from you guys. If you got questions or comments, you want to share your struggles, your thoughts on what we talked about here today, you can always contact us. Send me an email, Derek, D-E-R-E-K, at lifeaftersightloss.com. Hit us up on social media, Facebook, Instagram, something like that. Links to all of that, of course, is always in the show notes. Dear, I'm going to give you a final thought here. I got a question for you. Which one of these struggles is hard for the sighted supporter to deal with? Which one of these do you think on your side is sort of the hardest one?
That's really hard because I think loneliness is a big one. But I also think feelings of being a burden is another one, because I feel like a burden as well when I'm asking people to come pick you up and take you and a kid to soccer practice or dance rehearsal or something like that. So I feel like a burden. So I can't imagine how you feel in that place. Now, you enjoy those times too, because that's a time for you get to talk to someone and be out of the house.
That's right.
And, you know, that kind of stuff. So specifically for you, I think loneliness is probably the hardest. For me, I think being a burden is the hardest. I know you didn't ask which was the worst for me, but that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we ask these questions, to get your opinions and thoughts. All right, guys. So our quote today comes from Lou Holtz. So, dear, why don't you give us our quote?
Lou says, everyone goes through adversity in life, but what matters is how you learn from it.
How you learn from it. And didn't we talk about that last week with the things we've learned, the life lessons in sight loss?
Yes.
Everybody faces adversity. Look, we're talking about sight loss on this podcast because, well, it's life after sight loss, but everybody goes through something. Everybody goes through some things, you know, like multiple things. And it could be grief and loss. It could be setbacks physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all those things. Everybody's going to face adversity and have struggles, just like we talked about today and more. But the thing isn't about just, you know, what struggle do you have? It's about learning from that struggle, you know, moving forward through that struggle and knowing that even if you still struggle with it today, it's okay. We all struggle with things. And I still struggle with things that I started struggling with right after sight loss, even today. And it's perfectly acceptable. You're not crazy. You're not going down the tubes. It's perfectly normal. And we all face those things from time to time. And we learn from them and move forward. All right, guys. Well, again, I just want to say a shout out to everybody that's listening, that's watching. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it. It's great. Again, like I said last week, to have people, you know, to have those numbers pop up, and it's like, oh my gosh, hundreds of people are listening and checking out this podcast.
Yeah,
we're just so grateful. So let us know what you think. We love hearing from you guys, and as always, remember that sight loss isn't the end.
It's just the beginning.
My name is Derek,
and I'm April,
and we'll see you
in the next one.